Laughing Vikings Live. High vibe chats with actors, comedians, and creators, plus stand-up comedy, sketch comedy, and most importantly, you. That's right, join us every Monday for new episodes, and you can be a part of the show on Facebook Live, YouTube Live, and Twitch. Ask questions and interact in the comments, and make sure to share this with your actor, comedian, and creator friends so they can be a part of the show too. Can't make a live show? No problem. You can catch up on your favorite podcast platform and visit laughingvikings.com to find out how you can join the cast and crew. All right, it's time for today's show. Buckle up and make sure you stick around to the end because we have a special surprise for you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it is Laughing Vikings Live. Happy Monday Fun Day. Let's go. To podcast or not to podcast? That is the question. And the answer is yes. We are podcasting. This is episode 55. I'm Lars. We got BK Broiler, Brandon Knox in the house. We're coming to you live from Laughing Vikings. How you doing, Brandon?
I'm doing fantastic, Lars. I'm very excited for this two-part Finanza of Shakespeare. It is going to be a doozy.
Yes, we have 2 weeks here for everyone who is a Shakespeare lover. And if you're not, by the end of these 2 weeks, if you've listened and paid attention, you will be a Shakespeare lover. So buckle up for a lot of Shakespeare. We're going to introduce our guests and bring them into the studio here momentarily. We did also have a great weekend at Comedy Alley. And I just want to let everyone know, if you have not come to a show, we only have 3 weekends left. No, 2 weekends left. This weekend and then the next weekend, ending on October 30th. So check us out, laughingvikings.com/comedy alley to get tickets. We showcase pro comedians every week as seen on Just for Laughs, JFL 42, Comedy Network, CBC, Crave, Hulu, HBO, people who have toured the country and others. I always joke that they've, in Canadian entertainment, the comedians that we showcase here at Comedy Alley have done everything you can possibly do in Canadian entertainment except leave Canada. That's literally the last thing on their vision board is GTFO. But with your help, people, listeners of Laughing Vikings Live, you can save a Canadian comedian from going to LA where it is currently on fire. They want to leave Canada to go somewhere that's currently in flames right now. And maybe we'll just break off into the ocean next time the big earthquake hits. But if you come out to one of these Laughing Viking shows in Comedy Alley, you can convince these comedians that we got audiences here, we got a business here, we got an industry here, and they don't have to go somewhere that's on fire right now. So thank you. That's
a hell of a comparable.
we only have what's this weekend? The 22nd and the 23rd, and the 29th and the 30th. You can get tickets. The link's up there, laughingvikings.com/comedy alley. Normally they're 9 p.m. We may move that up a little bit since the sun's setting and the temperature is dropping. But troopers, I gotta say, the audiences on the weekend, I loved every second of it. The comedians were great, but the audience is just troopers outside in an October night where I don't know what the weather was like. Did it dip into single digits by 11 o'clock? I don't know.
I feel like it must have, but they really were.
We also had a couple people that were like horribly underdressed for an outdoor show. I assume when they were leaving their condos on Saturday, they weren't thinking, I'm going to go to an outdoor alley for a comedy show. One audience member in particular had a very stylish mini skirt, which is not a good option when you're sitting outside from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on an October night. So what we did is being the host, I was like, I can't let these poor souls just suffer here. At least they were suffering with a smile, at least. So we grabbed, I looked around here, and I don't really have tons of blankets in the studio, but I do have tons of studio backdrops. So one lady, she had the green screen, and she was able to drape that green screen blanket over her legs. Another couple, a mother-daughter couple, they got the nice black backdrop that we use here in some self-tapes. And so we just buried them all in studio backdrops. It was a beautiful thing. People were talking about lighting some wood on fire, but not a good thing to do on a rooftop deck to start lighting fires. So we did not do that, but we got 2 more weeks to go. So come on out to Laughing Vikings. And the October 30th show, of course, being Halloween Eve, is going to be a Halloween themed costume show. I'm sure some of the comedians will be dressing up. Might be some Halloween themed comedy. And we highly, 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 highly encourage you to wear a costume. Don't be one of those losers who shows up to a Halloween costume party with no costume, unless you got a really good excuse for it. Like, what am I? I'm the dud that, look at me. I'm the dud that went to a Halloween costume with no costume. That is my costume. That's brilliant. That's meta. If you can pull that off, but wear a costume, do something. We're going to party till, I don't know, till the snow flies or till everyone's core temperature reaches a dismal level that causes be like, how did 20 people in Toronto get hypothermia all on the same night? It's like they were outside for 4 hours during a comedy show.
That's not a lawsuit.
Check it out. We got a great lineup. Also, to all the actors that are out there right now, I know a lot of our viewers are actors and comedians, but people who are working TV, film, and theater. If you have not come to Laughing Vikings for an audition session, guess what? We're going to give one to you for free. So next time your agent sends you an audition and you're like, oh my God, who am I going to find to do this? I don't want to do this with my boyfriend, girlfriend. I don't want to get my nephew to read for me. Now I got to set up all the lights in the condo and figure out where to put the cat and dog. Just come to Laughing Vikings and you can do it on the house the first time at laughingvikings.com/gift, GIFT. And the first one's on the house. Might be Brandon helping you with it. Might be me. Might be any one of our other session directors here. But we help you rehearse and record professional auditions without tech hassles, without bugging your family and friends, so that you can have more fun and book more roles in TV, film, commercials, and theater. And we'll help you do it. And we always have a blast here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So come check that out. All right. Shameless plugs finished. Should we get this ball rolling? All right. I'm going to hand it off to Brandon here. I love introducing people, but Brandon, you know our guests a little more than I do. So go ahead and intro them. This is a big moment for you. I don't know that you've introduced a guest. This is huge. Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, today we are joined by the founders and co-artistic directors of a fantastic theater company called Shakespeare Bashed. They have produced and performed shows across Toronto, Ontario, in iconic bars throughout the city. This company is dedicated to exploring Shakespeare in a collective environment to understand his work and the world we live in now. They are actors, directors, and teachers. Please give a warm welcome to James Wallis and Julia Nish-Lapidus.
Hi there.
Welcome. Welcome.
I love that so much.
Very exciting.
Yay.
That was fantastic.
Killed it.
Loved it.
That was two first. The first time Brandon has introed our guest, although he does the intros. He's DJ BK Broiler at our comedy shows, so he always introduces me as the host. So he's got a little practice there. But the second first is you are our first dynamic duo guest on the show. So you got double the fun here, double the knowledge, double the inspiration, double the motivation. So thank you for joining us today. This is great.
Thanks for having us.
Yes, so we're going to get right into it. This is tradition, and again, we've never done this twice, so it's going to be so we're doubling up on the episode. But to start off the episode with our guests, we do something called the 1 minute life story, and that is where Brandon's going to throw a stopwatch timer. Yep. You got 60 seconds. We flipped a coin earlier, and Julia, you will be going first. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is Julia Nish-Lapidus's 1 minute life story. Go.
Oh no, I was not prepared for this. I was born in Toronto and then I lived in Halifax and I saw Cats when I was 4 and I fell in love with theater and I wanted to be a dancing, singing cat. So I started taking all of the theater classes in the world. Then we moved to London, Ontario, continued that life. I went to theater school. Not much happened when I was a kid. It's not very exciting.
No, I mean, this is part of it.
I
Right?
fell in love with Shakespeare when I was 10 and became totally obsessed with it. Then I went to theater school, continued to be in love with Shakespeare. Then met James, who also loved Shakespeare, and I fell in love with James, and we loved Shakespeare and all of those things. And since then, I've been doing a whole lot of Shakespeare and spending time with James. And acting and directing, and that's, I don't know, I feel like I should have a real personality outside of my career, but that's just what came out. So clearly I've been working towards this since I was 4 years old and I saw cats. The end. 1 minute.
Ding, 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 ding. That is correct. That was Julia Nish-Lapidus's 1 minute life story. That was brilliant.
That was
And
amazing.
trust us, we
Oh,
know that
James.
we know,
Glad I didn't go first.
we know that no
right.
one is prepared for that, and that's part of the magic. And but now now that James had just a bit of time to think about it, that can be good or it can be bad because he's kind of like started the half form thing. So we'll see. Do we give prizes in this case? Okay, here it is. Ladies and gentlemen, this is James Wallace's 1 minute life story, and go.
All right. Began mostly in high school doing musical theater. Also had a Shakespeare company in my hometown of Newark in Ontario, Canada, called Resurgence Theater Company. Did some plays with them. Went to theater school, became a professional. My love of Shakespeare started when I was very young. I picked up a book off my parents' shelf and started reading it. Didn't really understand half of it, but was intrigued enough to continue along reading The Merchant of Venice. Was very fortunate enough to meet Julia, almost 12 years ago now. On our first date, we sort of talked, we drank beer and we talked about Shakespeare, and I said that, oh, we're both actors, we love Shakespeare, we should do The Taming of the Shrew in a bar because I want to do Shakespeare in bars, and you should play Caterina and I should play Petruchio. And we ended up doing that actually a month before we got married. And so we created Shakespeare Bash together. We've been working together ever since. And we have a great deal of passion for Shakespeare, for actors, for teaching. We're very fortunate people to be able to work and do all things together. I did it almost. I was a little bit longer.
Boom. That was great.
Boom.
Both too career focused.
Things, but I mean, we're here for this.
Yeah, I found it really interesting. James just skipped straight to high school and Shakespeare. He just no childhood. It's just all repressed memories in the past.
Yeah, move on. Let's move on.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I think we can safely say that was by far our best double 1 minute life story we've ever had on the show. So thank you.
Hands
That
down.
was brilliant. All right, Brandon, I think you got some questions locked and loaded. Yeah,
I do. So I'd like you to both answer this question. What was your very first performance? And we'll start with Julia again.
Very first performance like that I was in.
Yep.
Oh.
Doesn't matter if it's school, doesn't matter if it was professional, whatever you remember.
It was, my very first performance was definitely school. In Halifax, I went to this weird independent school run by a bunch of hippies, including my mom. That was like an experiment with Dalhousie University and like cooperative education. So we did plays all the time, and we would write the plays based on storybooks and blah, 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 blah. But I was one of the young kids who like could learn all the lines and knew all the things, and was really intense. So even before I was old enough to have real parts in the show, I actually don't even know if I was going to the school yet or if my mom was just running it. And I got to be a mouse in some show and a maypole dancer. And then all of a sudden the next year I was like the person who said all the lines. But those were really ridiculous school shows at Dalhousie University that I did when I was a kid.
Amazing. And James?
My first would have been in high school. I joined the musical, which was sort of a big deal at my school. Like when I went to high school, our football team never won a game for 4 years that I went there. But we were like this musical theater, like virtuoso program. So I joined that because.
And why did you join?
Because I really wanted to meet a girl and hang out with a girl as much as I can. And you had to rehearse after school a lot. So, it's just kind of a way to meet her. So we did, I joined the musical, and it was a funny thing happened on the way to the forum. And nothing happened with the girl, but I just kind of liked the vibe. Like, it was just like, oh, we get to we have purpose here. We do stuff. Theater is fun. So that's kind of what hooked me in. And then from there, I never stopped. So did
amazing.
Plays every
smart.
Yeah.
Smart. I feel like that's a lot of reason why people join theater, because you get to kiss people sometimes, and you get to act across your school crush, versus playing football where you just smash your heads against other people's heads, which isn't as fun.
No, never understood that.
No prestige in that.
I like the fact, Julia, that you mentioned that I think you said when you were 10, you saw cats, and then you wanted to be a dancing cat. But then you also mentioned that you had played a mouse too.
I had played a mouse, and it was when I was 4 I saw cats. I don't think it would have affected me as much when I was 10, because I don't know, at 4 those dancing cats are real impressive.
They're great.
How'd you feel about the movie?
Haven't watched it.
Good for you. Smart life decision, probably.
I am one of those weird people who will still defend cats. I know it's weird and stupid, but I can sing the whole thing and I love it, which is surprising to people as a Shakespeare person sometimes, I think. And I don't know. At some point, I'll get really drunk and watch that movie, probably. But
yeah, just turn it into a drinking game or something.
Yeah.
It has to be, right? I don't know.
Yeah.
Do you remember who you played in A Funny Way to the Forum, James?
I played one of the soldiers that we were a chorus member, and we had these funny bits. It was quite impressive of a production. We had 3 houses as sets. It was, my high school was great for that. So and that one's a fun musical. So yeah, I was very lucky.
Nice.
So those were your what we'd call probably your first amateur performances. When did you make the leap to pro? So question is, do you remember what your first paid anything was that you did?
Mine was when I worked when I was about 19 years old, and I worked for the Resurgence Theater Company, and we did Love's Labor's Lost and Measure for Measure. And I played Dull the constable, and I played a small role in Measure for Measure. And that was I do remember getting my first paycheck for acting. That was really cool. Wasn't much, but it was something.
Yeah, I think I might have done some when I was younger, but the first real professional job that I got on my own and I was really proud of was straight out of theater school, and I played Audrey in a production of As You Like It in Brampton. Yes. And really great cast. A lot of my closest friends came from that. In fact, the people who introduced me to James came out of that show. So it was a really special show. And Audrey was a fun character.
I always find whether it's an acting gig or in the stand-up world, the first time you get paid, it almost feels like too good to be true, or it feels like, are you sure? I just had the most fun time ever doing the thing that I love, and you're going to give me money for that? It's a great feeling. And then it becomes a struggle to make that consistent pay coming through. But in stand-up, it's I just did 7 minutes and got paid $20. What's what does that work out to? That's I don't know how the math works on that, but what is that? $120 an hour? That's pretty good. And the challenge is finding more of those 7 minutes throughout your week, and then doing that. So
don't forget the tickets. Those are part of the payment, right? So
say that again.
Don't forget the drink tickets. Those are part of the payment.
Drink tickets, chicken wings, sometimes little nuggets of weed. You never know what you're gonna get. You get a little bit of everything, which we're all very appreciated.
I love it.
Brennan?
But that's a perfect segue into our next question, because we're all about starting up your own thing and doing your own project. So what I would really like to know is, how was Shakespeare Bashed founded?
It's a great question. I had already, before we started Shakespeare Bashed, I had started producing and had another company called Theater Caravel that did more I don't know, weird shit.
Yeah.
Not classical stuff.
I had a small company too. We had done kind of Pinter plays and stuff. Nothing too extravagant. Just kind of doing, I want to do a play, so we'll just put it on.
But when I was still in theater school, I spoke to an actor, Alon Nashman, who's an incredible actor and creator. And he does everything. And he said to me, the number one thing you need to do as an actor is create your own work. He said the jobs just aren't there, but they will come. But you need to sometimes just make them for yourself and start getting your name out there and start feeding your creativity and things like that. So when James and I met, and he, said that I should play Kate on our first date, which is not a compliment.
It worked though.
Of all the characters you could pick, Kate makes a shrew, not the highest compliment, but I took it, and clearly it led to a marriage. But I was running Theater Caravel, and I was very much in the like, well, you just do it. So he was talking about like wanting to do Shakespeare and how bars would be great, and I was like, this is amazing. Why aren't you doing it?
Well, it was kind of founded on two things. Originally, when we were talking, because Julia was like doing this other thing, and I was sort of thinking about this, she was, you know, kind of in two spots. So I was thinking originally like, how do we do this? And the two things that I really wanted to do were text-based Shakespeare. So Shakespeare that's, you know, around the idea of like what is being said in the words, and that was an important part of for me. And the other side of it was I wanted to do it in bars because I felt like a bar is like a social place.
Because we always say going to the bar after the show and talking to everyone about it is like one of the best parts of going to a play.
The best part of going to a play is the bar afterwards.
Yeah, so like why shouldn't that just be the whole night?
Yeah. And we wanted Shakespeare to be a place like, you know, we love going to Shakespeare and still do, but we wanted to be a place where you didn't sort of sit back in your chair and like let it come to you, that you were sort of really engaged and try to approximate some idea of what Shakespeare's atmosphere was when he was first writing the plays. Now, that's a whole other can of worms of whether or not we're doing that or not. But
well, and whether or not we actually want to do all of that.
No, it's a little bit of column A.
We want a little bit of the raucousness.
Yeah, we want it to be.
And we want it to be fun. People don't think of Shakespeare as fun, and we think it is. So we started with some readings. We started doing staged readings where we just gathered a bunch of our favorite actors and would spend, you know, some nights over the course of a few weeks working through the text of a play, really doing intense text work, putting together a reading that we would then present somewhere.
Like one day. It would be like day. It was very much about process too, and it still really is for us, right? Like process is so important. So we would rehearse for months, and then we'd do like, okay, we're just gonna do it now on a Sunday afternoon for 20 people. You know?
But there was great response to that. So we did that a few times, and then we said, well, we really want to do a show, like a full show in a bar. This was the summer before our wedding. We said, let's start with the Taming of the Shrew, and let's try and do it in the Fringe, because there's a support system in the Fringe, especially as a new producer, when you're younger as a producer, or when your company's not as established. The Fringe is like the best place to do it. I had already been working as a producer for a while, but I was still just like, let's get all of the press and the media and all of that through the Fringe and just see. It was kind of an experiment.
Yeah, we had no idea.
Is anyone interested in this version of Shakespeare? Does anyone actually want to come spend the night at the bar, see the Shakespeare that's super bare bones? Does anyone care? So we started doing the Taming of the Shrew, and we partnered with the Victory Cafe, who were amazing to us. We were there for 5 years. And on the first, and this was before you could buy Fringe tickets in advance. So you just had to hope people showed up at the door. And on the first day of performances, we sold out in like 5 minutes. And we were like, what is that? Why? We still aren't quite sure. But there was just something about, Fringe, recognizable title, some recognizable actors that had been around and in things. But I think people were just excited to spend 90 minutes in a bar and watch a play that might be different than what they expect. And it was a huge hit, and it kind of took off, and we were like, oh, okay, people like this. Like, this is a thing people want.
Yeah. So we continued from there just to build the company, build our patron base, and
really refine our like pedagogy.
Yeah. And still make it about the actors and the work, and do different shows like from Shakespeare's canon. We also do we still do stage readings, which is a big part of what we want to do of Shakespeare's contemporaries, because doing the plays of the time that aren't by Shakespeare sheds light on his plays, and it's
plus they're awesome.
They're fun, it's a lot to do with fun, and just like, we love Shakespeare, we love the theater, and we just want to have a good time with some really great actors. And then from there has come other things, teaching and not only within the company, but at universities and other places like Stratford and all that. So we're very fortunate to have had, not only artists that want to work with us, but also people that want to see the plays. Yeah. So that's been great. Even, King John, which is not a known title of his. So,
but they came
and they liked it. So it was fun.
Hey, there you go. You did something that Christopher Plummer said couldn't be done.
Yeah, congrats on that. It's great. Anytime you take something sort of out of its usual space or form, and you put it in a different world, I think often the results are amazing. I'm sure booze and beer had a lot to do with that success, which now makes me think, like, what other things could be done in bars that aren't currently being done in bars right now? It's interesting. We'll think about that one.
We'll put our collective brain power together and find something.
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, I love the idea too. I think often when people think about Shakespeare, because of the language being a little different, they think it's really fancy or hoity-toity, or it's just this old classical thing. But to bring it to bars, you bring it to presumably blue collar, everyday, normal working class people kind of thing, which is great.
I mean, the goal is that it can be for anyone. So, you know, people who are subscribers to Stratford can come see our shows. And people who have never seen themselves reflected in Shakespeare or felt Shakespeare was for them, or, you know, we have actually a lot of audience where, I mean, not a lot, but we have a number of regular audience members where English is their second language, and they were always interested in Shakespeare but felt intimidated by it, and have found coming to our shows, the atmosphere is very welcoming. They feel comfortable there, and the text is really clear, and they find they're able to hear it and understand it in a way they haven't before.
And there's nowhere to hide in the bar, both actor and audience. So there's this sort of really interesting dialogue between the actor and the audience. I think with Shakespeare, I think that was the purpose of Shakespeare's work, is like, you're in the open air, everybody can be seen. It's sort of like this conversation about any number of different topics. And that's what we really want to approximate. So in a Shakespeare Bash performance, if you're an actor, you can't hide behind lights or sets. You're kind of out there, and you have to talk to the audience.
And bring them into
it. And it could be funny moments. Like when I played Hamlet for us, like I turned to do like this big speech, and it was my dad, and he was asleep. Right? You know, so like you have moments, but then you have also moments where you connect on a level with an audience member, and you can see their gears moving, their thoughts coming out. And again, it's fun, it's entertainment, it's a night out, it's all those things. But as Shakespeare is known to do with his works, it creates ideas in our heads, not only as the performers, but the audience. So I like that dialogue. That was a part of what we wanted to do.
It's beautiful. I love that your dad fell asleep. Too many beers? It was too many beers, wasn't it? Yeah.
It was a beer. He was tired. You know, it's uncomfortable sometimes.
It happens to all of us.
He was. Well, I was. He was like, yeah, I didn't fall asleep. It's like, you did, but it's okay.
He's like, I've seen this kid do it a million times. I've heard it all. Yeah.
Right? I know I got to pick that moment up. Right? Yeah. You know, just when you're staring right at him. So it's all good.
Yeah,
it's great.
Okay, so let's get into the meat and potatoes of this podcast today. So please take us through Shakespeare 101, or your first 20 minutes of whatever you would like us to learn about Shakespeare, because we're clueless.
We're going to do our best. You let us know when we have been talking too long, because that happens.
Yeah.
I think the first thing we say anytime we start working with someone or a group of people on Shakespeare, or really any classical text, is not to be scared of it. You know, we kind of got into this already, that there's this idea that Shakespeare's fancy, that it's, you know, not for everyone. Well, that's not actually who he was writing for. He was writing for anyone and everyone. He was writing for the general masses who were in, you know, who were the groundlings in the pit. And he was writing for royalty, who were watching the shows as well. So it doesn't need to be this scary thing. And our hope is that we can always help kind of demystify that for people.
Yeah, like for me, there's 3 ways to build character in Shakespeare as an actor, right? There's 3 ways, which is what you say, what you do, and who you are. And that means that, like, we have all these traditions with Shakespeare, like so many performances, so many theories that come down to us now.
Or like the idea of, here's how this character should be played.
You can read books. They're all in this book room that we're in right now, like about, you know, how Edmund Kean played Hamlet, you know, back in the 19th century. And that's fascinating if you're interested in that, it is. But in the end, if we're going to do these plays now, you know, we have the text, we have what the character does, the actions, and then we also have who you are as the actor. So if I'm playing this role, or Julia's playing this role, or you guys are playing the roles, your humanity comes into play. How you choose to go through this play with what you say and what you do is what's most important. It's what I'm interested in more than anything.
Yeah, it's what makes it unique. These plays have existed for over 400 years. So why do we keep doing them? Well, I can tell you it's not the stories, as
They're
controversial
stolen.
as that might be. Shakespeare didn't come up with
No.
these stories. They've been told before. They'll be told again. There are wonderful adaptations.
And we know them.
Yeah. There are some beautiful words. We love the words. They're gorgeous. So yes, the words are a huge part of it, but also the way different people bring themselves to these roles. That if we just keep replicating, so-and-so's version of Lear, well, that's boring. That's been done. I'm not interested in seeing that person's version of Lear told through these other 20 actors who are then trying to just mimic that person, because there's this desire as an actor, like, I want to be unique, I want to stand out, how do I be the most clever, how do I come in and show them who I am and what I do, and I'm so special. And in fact, you doing the role, you looking at what the character says, what the character does, and then doing it as you, not trying to approximate how you think it should be done, that's what makes it unique. And that's why no one could play the same Lear that Brandon's going to play. That's unique to you, and only you are capable of doing that. So I think it's important to remember whenever you start that, yes, we have this history of these words and what they mean, and the stories and the characters and what they're doing and how they interact. But what we don't have and have never had before is that specific actor in that specific role in this specific moment. Because also you could play the part a year ago and then play it now, and it'll be totally different.
With this specific ensemble, with this specific space where you're doing the play with this specific audience.
So trying to be clever, trying to be unique is not necessary.
Well, you'll find it along the way, for sure, but
there.
It has to be unique for yourself.
Yeah.
We do have 3 principles that we believe are essential to the work, right? I say them all the time. I know Brandon's heard them, and I know that a lot of people, I should get it tattooed on my forehead sometimes. I've said it so many times, right? But there's 3 simple principles that if you have them, you have Shakespeare, and they are clarity, intention, and pace, right? So if you have clarity, if you know what you're saying, right, then you have that. If you have intention, what are you doing, and how are you doing that? And then if you have pace, like sometimes, and I'll be really annoying here, I do this all the time, but Shakespeare has rhythm to it. It's forward moving. Sometimes we feel like we should hold back and go slower.
Or that it's so hard for people to understand. So we really need to slow it down so they can hear every word.
But in our experience, that's not the best. The best way to go about it is to keep it at a clip like this.
Keep it moving. The fact is, when someone's watching Shakespeare, they're not listening to every word you say. They're letting, the best way to watch Shakespeare, and I find it can take 30 minutes of a play for you to settle into doing this. You can spend the first 30 minutes being like, what's that word? What did they just say? I missed that word. And then you just start to let it wash over you.
Like waves over you.
Yeah. And
it's like being on the beach.
If the actor understands every word and how the words are working together, then the audience will get what's happening. They'll get what you're saying. They'll get what you're doing without having to be like, what was that word? Oh, I don't understand. They'll get it. It'll wash over you.
Or at least they'll stay with you, and they'll be interested enough in what you're saying. And then they might be saying, oh, I didn't quite get that part, but I got something out of that.
But if you go too slowly and really milk
first of all, it'll just be a long evening.
It'll be very long.
And we found that the audience just gets ahead of you at that point.
They get bored. They're not listening anymore because, you can tell just from the way the 4 of us are talking tonight. No one thinks that slowly. No one talks that slowly. That's not what we're used to. Conversations move at a clip. We're all thinking fast. We're all ready to move on to the next thought before we finish the first one.
Yeah.
So that's what these characters are doing too, and that's where pace comes in.
Yeah.
Let's go back to clarity and really talk about what it is, because we love clarity.
Clarity is where you start. You start with the homework. You start with, as you love to say, the Shakespeare detective work.
It's like Shakespeare detective work. You pull out your little magnifying glass and you're like, ooh, what words are here? What do they mean? What are they doing? What clues has Shakespeare left for me all these years ago that I can now find and choose what I want to use?
Yeah. And there's lots of ways to do that. The first is the dreaded iambic pentameter, scansion. Oh no, the ba-bum, 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 ba-bum. And scansion is a tedious ordeal to work out as an actor, but to us it's essential.
So
It
useful.
creates so much meaning to understand why things are being said in this rhythm, in this way, where they are placed in the verse line. It's so important to understand, is the verse line regular? Is it 10 beats? Is it iambic? Is it trochaic? Is it irregular? And what does that tell you about the character? Is it monosyllabic, right? So is it 10 words of one syllable? And in our experience, it's hard to say that, very fast, right? If you in sooth, I know not why I am so sad, right? All those consonants, it's really hard to go in sooth, I don't know why I'm so sad. Like, you can't.
So it gives a weight to each word
Yeah.
that you may not find when you have multiple syllables in words in a sentence.
Yeah.
Scansion, I find when teaching like introductions to Shakespeare, and I always start at scansion, and people kind of say, well, I don't want to, like, that's not acting to just do it like that, to go, in sooth, I know not why I am so sad. I'm like, yeah, that's not acting. That's scansion. You have to do that to start, right? To know that in sooth, I know. Okay, no, that's a useful word. In sooth, I know not why. So it's not, I know not.
Yeah.
It's, I know not. Oh, and you could choose after doing this to say, no, for me, it's, I know not why I am so sad.
One of the most famous lines in Shakespeare, now is the winter of our discontent. And it scans, now is the winter of our discontent, right? And most actors, the most famous actors, whether it be Mark Rylance, whether it be Shauna McKenna, whether it be Ian McKellen, tend to go, now, right? They say that first word. That's their choice. These are rules. Like, that's the thing. Scansion is a set of rules, but rules are meant to be broken. So, like, that's totally fine, right?
It's like doing jazz. Learn the scales, understand the theory, then fuck around with it and create your art. It's the same thing. I'm really sorry. Can I swear on this?
Bring it on.
Yeah.
But if you don't know those things, if you don't know the scansion, if you can't pull
did
that,
we freeze?
No, you're not frozen.
If you can't pull those meanings, those things out of the work, and that includes verse structure, right? Knowing if the thought in the line goes beyond the end of the verse line into the next line, where does it end? Does it end again at the end of the verse line right there, or does it stop in the middle with the great old word that I love to make people uncomfortable with, caesura, right? When I say the word caesura, everybody goes, what the fuck is a caesura? And I go, it's just like there's a stop in the middle of the line, and that's telling you something about the character. Yeah,
you can learn about the character's state of mind.
Yeah.
Do they have, if their lines are irregular, if they're stopping in the middle and changing thought a lot, their brain might be a little hectic
One
right
of
now.
the most famous irregular lines in Shakespeare is to be or not to be, that is the question. It's 11 syllables, right? There's no way to make it 10. You can't go question, right? That doesn't make any sense. So what does that tell us about Hamlet? Well, Hamlet is thinking too much. Hamlet can't control this thought. He runs over the line. Right? So, like, those are good places to start. What's my scansion? What's my verse structure? What do the words mean? That's one of the hardest things to do, because, yes, Shakespeare's words are English words. They are archaic at times. They are old references.
And many of them mean what we think they mean.
Very much so.
But some of them don't.
Some of them mean, more so than that.
And that can be some of the most fun stuff to discover, is to be like, oh, I really thought I knew what this word meant, but in the context of this, it's not making sense right now. Let me look it up. Holy shit, there's this whole other definition that I've never noticed, and it makes this whole thing make so much more sense.
Like in Macbeth in Act 1, Scene 5, and Lady Macbeth says, about, she's got the letter, and she's like, oh, they met me on the day of success, and she's reading the letter, and then she has a soliloquy where she says about Macbeth, she says, thou art too full of the milk of human kindness. And kindness, we go, oh, that means you're a nice guy. But in that context, it also means that you're too human. You're too full of human kindness, right? So her assumption is he's not going to be able to do this because he's got too much compassion. He's got too much humanity. Right, which leads her into saying that whole thing with the spirits, unsex me here, take my milk for gall. She needs to be inhuman, right? So when you know that, you can connect the dots, and you're like, oh, that makes sense, right? So words are incredibly important, and they're an Oxford English Dictionary is a very helpful thing. and the Schmidt tomes, which are right behind me, the little books of with the small writing, and you can look up the words. So it's work. It's a lot of work.
But it can be so fun when you discover something, and really you feel like you unlocked like a treasure from 400 years ago, and then you can decide, is this useful to me as an actor right now, playing this part with what I want to bring to it? Yes or no? And not everything has to be useful to you.
No.
You can play with the scansion. You can play with, what you're saying with the words, what you're doing, what your character wants out of this situation, and how does that influence it. But knowing it, finding all those clues is only going to make it easier. As much as it's a lot of work up front, then you have them all. It's like this buffet of clues in front of you, and you can be like, okay, I'm going to have a little bit of this one, and then I'll sprinkle in some of this, and you build this, these deeper layers to the words you're saying by doing that clarity work.
Jules just said one of our favorite words, something we always tell the actors, whether it be in performance or you said something, and in performance or teaching, it's like, what is useful? What is useful to you?
Yeah, it's not about picking what the best choice is. I don't know what the best choice is. I know what's useful to me, but it may not be what's useful to you, and it won't be what's useful to James. So, sometimes when we're teaching, students look at us as if we actually have the answers of like how it should be done. There's no way it should be done.
No, there's no way. There's no right or wrong with Shakespeare. There's just different choices.
Yeah, it is about choosing the most useful things for you to build the performance that feels good for you in that moment, and it could change tomorrow.
And that comes with the second step after clarity, which is intention work, which is essentially just, what am I doing? Like, what am I doing in any moment? And that's all acting. But a lot of what we talk about is like, stakes, point of view, right? We talk about something, this little sort of trio of word questions we always ask every actor, and it's so important to us. It's like, any moment in Shakespeare is, before you walk into a scene, in the middle of a scene, in the middle of a speech, any moment, you should be asking yourself, like, what is my expectation? What is my hope? And what is my opinion? Right? So I expected to come here and do a podcast. My hope would be it's going to go really well. My opinion is slightly nervous. Don't usually do this very often, but I'm also like excited and all these things. So therefore, you apply that structure to a character in Shakespeare. So we have, once Hamlet walks into the first Act 1, Scene 2 in his play, right? What is his expectation? His uncle father is now the king, right? And what is all these other things that are going on? And that can specify for you what's going on.
Yeah, it really puts you in the moment. It allows you to figure out, and then tracking when that changes.
Yeah, and that's the most
shifts in those things are gold.
Yeah.
None of these things are playable. You can't play, will I expect this to happen? You can't play, I hope this will happen. You can't play, here's what I'm feeling. But all of those will add texture and detail to whatever it is you're actually doing to your scene partner or whoever it is you're talking to.
Yeah, it's all about actions, and we all verb text. We all go in there and we get the source out of the $35 actions book that our theater school made us buy. That's just like a tarted up thesaurus in the end, and we start to find words that are helpful to us.
But then it becomes an arms race of clever, right? So you're like, okay, I'm asking all these questions. So on this one, I question, then I inquire, then I ask, and it's like, well, am I actually doing anything different with any of those? No, I'm just asking questions with all of them. But maybe something else is shifting. Maybe there are, larger things at play. Like, I'm really angry at one point. My opinion is that I'm angry, and then it shifts to something else. Maybe, one of my favorite expectation moments is in the balcony scene of Romeo and Juliet, where Juliet is by herself and she's speaking to the idea of Romeo, to the memory of Romeo, to whatever it is. And we often ask, actors to start right before Romeo speaks in that scene and say, Juliet, what's your expectation before he opens his mouth? And she says, well, I expect to be alone on this balcony doing my thing. So then the second the scene starts, the second Romeo opens his mouth and starts speaking to her, her expectation and her hope and her opinion have all changed.
And that's another.
It cannot be the same in that moment. So that immediately gives that actor something playable. in that moment, because if your expectation, hope, and opinion were to be alone and all of a sudden someone's talking to you, it can't be the same anymore. So instantly you have something to do.
And it's important to always remember too in Shakespeare, like, and I think all acting, but I think with Shakespeare especially, it's like you are doing something to somebody else. And that's what's most important. What am I doing to the other person or people in the scene or the audience? And that's especially important in Shakespeare with soliloquies, right? Sometimes you are alone on stage and you are talking to the audience. And often we like to do something. I learned it from my teacher, Ian Watson, and he talks about this idea of the friend on the other end. So if you're in soliloquy, you are talking to your friend, and they're there to help you, right? They're there to give you something. So you're having an active conversation. It's one-sided. You're talking, the audience. I mean, in Shakespeare's day, who knows if they talk back? But in this, usually you're talking and the audience is taking it in, but you're having a conversation.
And you normally need something from them,
Absolutely.
Even if it's comfort or for them to affirm what you're saying or just to be able to get it off your chest.
You're trying to achieve something.
Our belief is that Shakespeare didn't write for a fourth wall.
No.
That's not what the theaters that he was writing for. That's not how they were set up. And it's not how the plays seem to be structured, right? There's a lot of talking to the audience. So the second you put a fourth wall there, you're actually creating an extra challenge for yourself, because suddenly you have to take all this text that really is about talking to someone and going after something, and you're putting it so internal. You're only going to make it smaller. You're only going to dull all of those great choices you've made. You're not going to get anywhere with it. No. You're not going to move to the next level that character needs, because the character and the text was written to be able to have a back and forth with the audience, even if they're not actually vocally responding to you.
And then the like, after all of that work, after all that sort of working out and chatting and then playing in the rehearsal room, then you have, whether it be performance or audition or, running through the play in a rehearsal period, you have the pace work, which it's kind of like practice at a sport, right? Like you have to work at it so you can learn how to think faster.
Yeah, you can't get to pace immediately.
No, it's not possible.
And if you try to force it, your clarity and intention work will suffer.
And
patience is key with getting to pace.
And it takes time. And that's the thing. These three principles of clarity, intention, and pace, they're not mutually exclusive. You can't have one without the other, right? You need them all. Now, we truly believe that if you have those principles, if you have those three things, you've done that work, then you have Shakespeare. Then the rest of it is gravy. Then, I'm in this really cool production, or I've made this really interesting choice about this character that I'm working with, but I have these foundational principles that will help me move the text forward.
And did we say pace is not about speaking quickly?
No, it's about thinking quickly.
It's about thinking quickly. So we're not talking about seeing a production of Shakespeare where everyone's speed talking the whole time. That's not interesting. It's just that instead of saying something and then pausing and thinking about it and then saying something else and really drawing out the important words to make sure everyone gets that word, we're saying you do it more like how we're talking right now, and that you move on from one thought to the next and from one thought to the next. And when something's important, you emphasize it, but you don't need to pause on it forever.
Yeah, we don't really like pauses in our productions, right? Those got to be earned,
Yes. Sorry, I always love that.
It's going to be earned, those pauses.
Yeah.
And sometimes Shakespeare gives you that, right?
For sure. Sometimes they're written in, or sometimes you have, in your verse structure, you have in a whole section of iambic pentameter, then you're given this 4-syllable line and you're like, oh, well, I have 6 more beats. What am I supposed to do with those? Well, there's a moment. Then you have a choice. Then you can do something. It doesn't mean that you should pause and count to 6 in your head before you.
No.
But it does mean that there's something happening there. Somewhere in that line, something's happening. And you can, I normally will call it a breath, because, whether it's 6 beats or 4 beats or 2 beats or whatever, you don't pause for that long. But take a breath and do something with it. Have an intention to that breath, to that moment. What is it? What's happening? And you can use it.
To Julia's point, like one of the biggest things you need in Shakespeare is breath, right? You need to be able to breathe. You need to be able to figure that sequence out for yourself. How am I going to get enough air into my lungs to be able to speak this text in a way that I can speak it in a way that is full of intention and pace, and the clarity that I know is foundational. So, you know, and the metaphor I always use is like, breath is the wind in your sails, right? You're not going anywhere without it. So you got to find ways to do that. So, I mean, all in all, like, if we had to sort of sum it up, like, Shakespeare is rewarding because you can bring a lot of yourself to it. It takes work. I don't think it's actually more work than any other kind of acting.
It's just different.
It's just
work.
different. Like, it requires these things because that's the way the plays were written.
Yeah.
Like, if you were doing musical theater, like, you would have to do a lot of this homework
There's
too.
so much work.
You know, so
doing a production of Cats, that's a lot.
That would be a lot of work.
I mean,
So-
you can almost argue that soliloquies are almost like songs because it's so much emotion that's going through those soliloquies, right? Yeah.
Absolutely.
100%.
Absolutely.
We talk about it. I use the same metaphor. You know, I did a lot of musical theater when I was younger, and you know, they always talk about when the emotion is so high that you can't express it through speaking, then that's when the song comes in. I think it's similar in Shakespeare. I talk about it as metaphor. Often metaphors are really heightened emotions where just talking about it, just explaining how you feel with words can't do it anymore. So the character goes into a metaphor to illustrate it because the emotions are so extreme.
The poetry is so important. Actually, frankly, I find, and this I may not be the best person to have this sort of like, you know, circumstance or example, but I find it's much easier to memorize Shakespeare than it is a film script, right? Like, because the film script is either technical because you're doing a sci-fi show or a cop show or something, or it's, you know, 2 words. Like, we're just having a conversation. It's like, what'd you do last night? You know. So that's like, it's more about behavior and feeling, and that's lovely. I love those kinds of acting opportunities. Those are wonderful. And it's not that Shakespeare, you don't have an inner life, you don't have a sort of, you know, sub life that you're working with. That's an opinion, but he's giving you a lot of the things, a lot of the actions and emotions in the text. Like, metaphor in Shakespeare is so powerful. It's so much about what's pushing your emotion to the forefront. You know, metaphor and emotion go hand in hand. They're like the cart and the horse. That's, you know, the metaphor is pulling the cart of the emotion. And it's important to use the words in Shakespeare and mean it. You have to mean it. Like, sometimes we, like, at the end of all this work, and, you know, we found this in productions, after the end of all this work, months of work, you have this foundational idea, you trust it, you've worked on it. And then all you have to do is think, breathe, and speak. Like, really, that should be the goal.
Yeah, I talk about this work as the scaffolding that will hold you up. So you build all of this, you do all of this work to really get into it, to make these exciting and useful choices for whatever you've decided you're doing with this role. And then you stop thinking about it. Yeah. And ultimately you think, you breathe, and you speak. And all of this work is there supporting you. And you can stand on top of that scaffolding and know that it's there to support you in whatever you end up doing that night, and whatever happens, because it's live. Who knows?
Well,
what will
usually,
happen.
yeah. Usually, I mean, I don't know I've never done a film of Shakespeare, so I don't know what that would be like. But yeah, it's you're in front of people. Things are going to change.
So
any second.
So having this framework down there to support you is going to mean that you can just be present with whatever's happening that night and play with it and be open to it. One other thing that we didn't really mention, I mean, we kind of did, but something that we love that we didn't mention.
What's that?
Is how ambiguous Shakespeare is. It ties back into what we started with, which is the idea that anyone who wants to do this can do this and can bring their own voice and their own person to it. Because Shakespeare didn't write detailed characters for us. Shakespeare wrote kind of skeletal sketches of characters, and it is our job to fill it in. So whoever you are, and whether you've been told there's no place for you in Shakespeare, which we've heard and we think is a disgusting statement, or whether, you know, you've tried and it hasn't quite worked out, or whether you do it and you love it, like whoever, if you want to do Shakespeare, then you should be doing Shakespeare.
And let's never forget, Shakespeare is editorialized, and it's been editorialized for 400 years, right? So like punctuation, we all go back to the folio and say, that's what the punctuation says. And I'm like, sure. But that Shakespeare didn't necessarily write that. Like, it's hypothesis. We don't know anything concrete other than Shakespeare married, had kids, was, had the house, had all these things. He was very litigious. He was, he had these family connections and all that. We don't know. He didn't write an acting handbook. He didn't write a handbook on what the plays mean. We have to extract our interpretation. We have to interrogate. We have to investigate. We have to interpret.
And do it from our own perspectives
it has to
as
happen
people in 2021.
Yeah.
That's what's interesting.
That's what's interesting. So for anybody trying to approach Shakespeare, just know that, there's more words written about Shakespeare than you could ever possibly read in a lifetime. So you'll never get on top of it.
But James is trying.
I'll do my best, but I don't think it's going to happen. So, but for me, like, any idea is an idea and it's welcome. And that's where we should go forward with Shakespeare, especially with Shakespeare.
Yeah.
You guys are just spitting fire this whole episode. I love this. You notice this is, I think Brandon can say that this is the least we've talked in an episode, and it's because everything you guys are saying is amazing, and we want to let our experts just take the reins. So that was so good. And one of my favorite things in life and in career is when I hear when I hear the same ideas from multiple coaches, where I'm like, okay, yeah, that's where you've said something I've heard somewhere else, but in your words, and it just kind of corroborates that stuff. And you mentioned a bunch of things. One of the things you said was how you got to personalize it, and you have to use your own humanity. Whereas a lot of actors, especially with Shakespeare, they kind of have an idea, and they sort of like, oh, I'm playing the idea of a character. And one of our acting coaches, Tom Todoroff, he says they hold the script out here, and here's the character. But he says what you got to do is have it in here. And first you pee on it is his thing. You pee on it to be a little crude. So you make it yours, and so you own it. And then it's in here. So it's the words and it's the story, but it's still you doing it. The other thing you mentioned was acting at the speed of life is a term that we use, and that's pace for you guys. A lot of people doing TV and film, they're sighing between words, or the old, I'm going to look off into the distance in between my words and have a random pause here for no reason. James, you also mentioned there's not really a right or wrong choice. One of my coaches says there's no right or wrong. There's only weak or strong. There's no such thing as best or better, or like better or best. But there are things that are, okay, that was an okay choice. And then there are things that are really, really strong choices, but it's all rules to be broken, like you mentioned.
Yeah, it could be different for anybody, right? Like one person's strong choice is somebody else's weaker choice.
It depends who you are as an actor and what you're doing.
Yeah, it really comes down to like, what do you think?
Yeah.
Like, what do you think? What do you feel? What do you want in this moment as the human and embodying these words and these actions? So I agree. Like, I think it's all about how do you make it your own, for sure. And, with Shakespeare, we have a lot to take with us. A lot of baggage comes with Shakespeare, and we have to use that responsibly as actors, as artists, as anything. Right. So,
Love it.
And just to go off of this, just before we start to wrap up, I do want to talk about how are you trying to be on the forefront of making Shakespeare more diverse for audiences and also as actors?
We're working hard to, part of it is our work to make sure that everyone knows that if you want to do it, or if you want to participate in it, like, you should. Yeah. And you're welcome, because
everybody's invited to the
party. We have
party.
heard some really ridiculous stories of people being told that it's not for them. And that's just the dumbest thing I've ever heard. So some of that is, we've spent the whole pandemic teaching. We had to cancel shows. We can't go into bars and pack people in the way we would like to. So until we can do that, we're not going to do it. But we've been teaching, and we've made sure to really try and reach as many people as possible, to try and welcome people back into Shakespeare who may have been pushed away from it or felt excluded from it, to try and create really comfortable, welcoming spaces to re-engage and find their own voice in it. And we've been offering subsidized and free spaces in all of our classes for that purpose. But, you know, I really think a lot of what the whole industry needs to do is get over the ideas of what it used to be and recognize that we only benefit from more voices and perspectives and lived experiences coming through these words and these stories. That instead of trying to erase all of that, we need to bring all of that to the work and put it on the stage and share it with audiences who then may see their own lived experiences or perspectives presented through these really old characters that for way too long were seen as, you know, only white people or often only men for a while.
Yeah.
You know, and to really try, and I think it's the responsibility of anyone doing Shakespeare now to make sure that you're engaging with that conversation, and especially with Shakespeare, with some of the problematic things written in these plays, to actually engage with that and figure out, you know, there are things that can be cut because they're not useful to us anymore. And then there are plays like Othello where it's about race. So how do you tell that story? How do you tackle that? And how do you build the right company and team to tackle that?
Yeah, it's the sum of its parts too, right? So you bring in representation from as much different humanity as you can, and you make choices that are, again, editorializing the work, because that's what's been done since the beginning of Shakespeare.
Yeah.
You know, so I think that any choice that you make to cut or expand or change, you know, like we're all for that. I mean, every production of Shakespeare is an adaptation. Let's be honest. Like, because no one, I don't have met one person. I'm sure I have. I'll say this now, and somebody will text me and be like, "Yeah, I have," but I have not met one person who's seen an uncut version of the play.
Too
right?
long.
It just doesn't. So you're making choices in any given moment. So
Yeah.
you do that within the scope of your investigation, both as the artist, but in the ensemble, and the interrogation of these plays as much as possible from different lenses, whether they be from gender theory, critical race studies, any number of amazing people doing this kind of work, more so in the educational academic scene, but a lot of great work being done in the theater scene also.
Well, and it's important then to fill your room with people who can bring that and then create an environment where those perspectives, ideas, and voices are not only welcomed, but encouraged and respected and used.
Yes.
And if you're doing that, then you're going to have those conversations that will enrich the work that the whole company is doing.
We want everybody to come in and have fun, right? Like, that's the number one thing. It's supposed to be fun, right? So, like, that can't happen without the ability to be ourselves and be safe in rooms. And that needs to happen. And feel seen, yeah, for who you are. Have your identity still in Shakespeare. And that's what we strive to do as much as possible, as much as we can, as much as we want to. Every day, that's what we want. We want people to be seen and be themselves. That's what's most important. Yeah.
Love it. Snaps all around.
Snaps all around.
Yeah. I love that you mentioned that it's supposed to be fun too. Our coach Tom always says it's called a play. It's called a play. It's not called a serious. It's called a play.
I love how you said every adaptation of Shakespeare is an edited work, because if Kenneth Branagh can get nominated for Best Screenplay for Hamlet for not editing a single thing in it, then anyone can edit Shakespeare.
Like, that's the sometimes people come back at me. It's like, well, he did it. And it's like, no, there's 3 versions of Hamlet. There's 3 versions.
Yeah, he compiled
it. There's more text he didn't have. So, like, that's
cool.
You're not seeing a complete version of the play because there's not one version.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, that's the thing that I like to do. That's what I spend every day doing, is trying to understand the plays more and more so that we can make these choices and have informed, investigated, and interrogated interpretations of these plays. That's so important to me because, you know, they're old, and they're long. And not everything is useful. Not everything in the plays is useful. So you have to make choices. And that's artistry. That's all about, to me, that's acting. Acting is choice. That's what we're doing. So whether I'm directing or acting or editing or dramaturging a Shakespeare play, I'm always making choices. Did we freeze? Cool.
Oh no.
Well, internet's fine. It's still going. They might have froze. Well, if we're alone, this is kind of cool. If we're alone, we are alone.
Why don't we stop for now?
We don't know what's happened, but we're going to stop everybody. And thank you for hearing us talk.
Hey there, everybody. Sorry about that. Hey.
Wow.
Sorry about that
We're
technical
all
glitch.
this amazing information. Shakespeare, it was just Shakespeare overload. We crashed the internet.
Oh no.
Wow.
We're like, oh no, did we do something?
Yeah,
Did
and
we
then
talk too long?
we were kind of like, well, we're gonna sign off now, and then you guys came back, so we were.
Oh, we're here. Yes. But we are bringing it back to port here shortly. Brandon, what did you want to cover?
Just before we go, what should performers know before applying to participate in a Shakespeare Bash workshop?
Not much. What should people know? That we want everyone to come and bring themselves and feel welcome and happy, that they shouldn't feel stressed about it or anxious about it. That if you want to, do some training with us, we would love it.
We have a different number of different classes that we offer, different levels. So we try to hit everybody's different interests as well. And some people are interested in like the themes of the plays and more of the sort of ideas of the plays versus just acting. So we try to hit all those. If you want to learn, we're happy to teach. So just
and that it's fun.
It's fun, yeah. Know that it will be fun and it'll be an informative session.
And likely at some point we'll invite you to have a beer with us.
Yeah, that's what we try to do. Even over Zoom, it's fun.
So if anyone is interested, and I don't know why you wouldn't be, in checking out a Shakespeare Bash production or workshop, you can check out their website at www.shakespearebash.com for more information there. So I think we're going to wrap this up, Lars, unless you have something else.
Well, I think just one thing I want to add to any actors out there, because I think there's a lot of actors, if they're just specifically working in TV and film these days, which a lot of people are, that's their aspirations. They may be thinking, well, yeah, this all sounds nice and this is fun, but I'm not doing theater. I'm not specifically wanting to do Stratford. And I think actors need to understand that the work that you do on Shakespeare is so deep and foundational that it informs so many other things, like all of these epic speeches. I did Shakespeare only in high school first, which when I wasn't an actor, then I had like a 20-year gap, became an actor. And then for the first 10 years of being an actor, didn't do any Shakespeare. And now I'm in a conservatory where I'm doing a ton of it and I love it. But all those epic speeches, those are the foundational like pieces that then like Henry's, and I'm working on Henry right now, Henry V, and those battle speeches, every TV and film like epic war thing, Braveheart, all of those like Lord of the Rings, those kings and those epic warriors, that's the speech. Or it's the lawyer speech at the end of a big law trial, or it's the doctor with all the jargon. Like to be able to master that kind of language and spend the time and also just to have the discipline. It does take some time to work through this. So once you develop that discipline, there's really no other text that someone can give you that's going to quote unquote scare you after it. So I think you work on it, even if it's not specifically because you want to work on Shakespeare, it's because having that foundation is then going to make everything so much easier and so much better. But it also deals with universals. It deals with love. It deals with family. It deals with betrayal. It deals with revenge, all of these universal things that are universally human. So there's those reasons to work on it too. So I would just encourage, I'm going through this like personal renaissance because I'm in this Shakespeare world, so I couldn't say it enough. It's like I'm almost like drop anything else you're doing and hop on a Shakespeare workshop with these guys, and it'll open up a whole new world for you. Do it.
Thank you.
Yeah, I love it.
So what we like to do to finish off the show is we like to do a quote to inspire our week, and why not pick something from the bard himself? So today's quote is, "Our doubts are traitors, and make us lose the good we oft might win, but fearing to attempt." Lars, you opened Laughing Vikings and you created Comedy Alley, and you've strived to make a home for comedians and actors to come and play and do their auditions and have fun doing that again. And James and Julia, you guys have created a theater company that has opened the doors to so many people that didn't believe they could do Shakespeare before meeting you guys. And both of those things are absolutely so commendable, and I applaud all three of you for doing what you do. And like, you guys make it easier to be an actor and to be a performer and to be a comedian. And I just want to say thank you, and do what you love, because then you'll never work a day in your life.
Yeah, sure.
Love it. And for the record, was that Polonius to Laertes? Is that who said that?
Claudia,
Yes.
Luciota Isabella, Act 1, Scene 4 of Magic.
Oh, okay. Polonius is something similar, I think. Yeah.
It's a maxim, right? Our doubts are
similar,
traitors.
yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
Challenge eventually. Which
always
play,
do.
which scene? Oh, I'm ready. You know,
Right.
so
I knew you
Love
would
it.
be.
Well, thank you for being on the show. Thank you for everything that you shared. I'm sure any actors watching today, and when this lives on the internet in perpetuity, long after we're all gone, people are going to be learning from you guys about Shakespeare. 500 years into the future, they'll still be learning this stuff. So thank you. Make sure, listeners, if you're not subscribed already, hit that subscribe button on any platform that you like to listen to podcasts, and join us here every Monday. And next week on Monday the 21st, or sorry, Monday the 25th, which also is St. Crispin's Day, is going to be part 2 of our Shakespeare lessons here with Mary Lou Rosado, who is a Juilliard trained Shakespeare behemoth, and you guys are going to love her as well. So check us out next week. Come on back.
Thank you so much, James and Julia. Now, to leave us off, we have close-ups make careers, so make a funny pose and get right in there.
Get in there. Closer.
Goodbye.